Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says the goal of his military operation in Syria is to eliminate terrorist groups. Speaking at the Turkey Council summit in Baku, Erdogan said Turkey plans to return 3 million Syrian refugees back home. Ankara says it has killed nearly 600 terrorists in the military operation. In a briefing, Defense Minister Hulusi Akar said Turkish troops have seized control of the key areas of Tal Abyad and Ras Al Ain. He said Ankara's operation is not against the Kurds. The SDF said they are launching a major counter-attack against Turkish-led forces near the border town of Ras Al Ain. The US has imposed sanctions on Turkey over its military operation in northeastern Syria. The US Treasury Department announced curbs on Turkey's defense and energy ministries, as well as the ministers of defense, energy, and the interior. The move freezes their assets in the US and bans transactions with them through the US financial system. US President Donald Trump has also asked Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan for an immediate ceasefire in Syria. Damascus has deployed troops near the Turkish border after Kurdish forces struck a deal with the Syrian government on Monday. Russia's special envoy to Syria, Alexander Levantiev, said Moscow will not allow clashes between Turkish and the Syrian forces. The UK has also suspended arms exports to Turkey, calling Ankara's actions in Syria reckless and counterproductive. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has discussed the security situation in Syria with Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Differences have emerged in the military alliance after NATO member Turkey began its offensive in Syria last week. Stoltenberg says many NATO allies are concerned about Turkey's actions. To talk more about this particular story, we have been joined by our correspondent from Brussels, Mia Alberti. Thank you for your time. What issues have been discussed between the NATO chief and the British Prime Minister so far?
Well, we know that UK has been a very important player in reacting to the Turkish military operation in northern Syria, but so far we haven't heard anything from them. So this meeting was very important. And just after Stoltenberg left Downing Street and said what you just mentioned, that a lot of EU allies are concerned about the situation, he again condemned the operations in northern Syria. Just after that happened, we heard the UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab in the British Parliament announcing that the UK will halt its arms exports into the country. So that's a development from Tuesday, and we saw, for example, on Monday several countries going forward with halting their arms exports, but the UK was not part of them. So today, after this meeting, it seems like the UK has been taking a stronger action against Turkey.
So, Bia, what is NATO's stance on the future of ISIS fighters detained in Syrian prisons?
Well, this is something that concerns a lot of the countries that are part of the EU, and that's why countries such as Germany and France were one of the first ones to announce a halt in arms exports as a measure of sanctions against Turkey, because we have seen terrorist attacks happening in their territories, taken out by the Islamic State. So a lot of countries are concerned that these fighters will regroup and restart their operations, and more instability can come to Europe. And then we also saw these countries joining together yesterday on the European Foreign Affairs Council. We saw a resolution that said that each European country would be allowed to create an arms embargo into the country.
So, Mia, have the NATO members discussed any sort of proposal to ensure the stability of Syria so that militants don't get any opportunity to regroup once again?
Exactly. I mean, that was one of the most important points coming out of the EU Foreign Affairs Council yesterday, where Federica Mogherini, the European Foreign Affairs representative, called for an urgent meeting of the global coalition against ISIL. And that means that they want to talk to the US about it. They want to talk with one of their most important partners in NATO to discuss what they want to do about this. We have heard that many ISIL fighters have been released or managed to escape prisons in northern Syria, and I know that is something that concerns a lot of European countries, the EU and NATO. So we will have to wait for that meeting, which will happen by the end of this week, to see any more developments and decisions on how to almost renew a fight against ISIL, something that was almost finished, that at least in public opinion was solved, and now it can become another issue for Europe and NATO.
Thank you, Mia, our correspondent from Brussels, updating us regarding the details of the meeting between NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg and British Prime Minister Mr. Boris Johnson. Now, moving on, 4 members of the government-allied Hashd al-Shabi militia have been killed in a bomb blast in northern Iraq. Police said the explosion happened inside a house during a military operation against the ISIS in northern Saladin province. The al-Shabi militia was formally incorporated into the Iraqi army in 2017. Iraqi authorities had announced ISIS had been largely eliminated after it regained the territories once held by the terror group. But such attack shows the terrorists still have a presence in the rural areas of Amba, Diyala, Kirkuk, Saladin and Mosul. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has reached in Saudi Arabia as part of his initiative to promote peace and security in the Gulf region. Khan will meet Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Earlier, PM Khan visited Iran, where President Rouhani hailed his efforts for peace. Iran's president said as an end to the Yemen war is a prerequisite to regional peace. Islamabad has condemned Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's statement in which he threatened to divide Pakistan into several parts. In a statement, Pakistan's Foreign Office said such a statement gives insight into the BJP's extremist mindset. The Foreign Office said it is highly irresponsible of the Indian minister to threaten a sovereign country in such a way. The statement said Islamabad is sure the international community will take notice of such radicalism. It also said Rajnath Singh should have no doubt that Pakistan is ready to defend itself against any evil design. Indian occupation forces have arrested the daughter and sister of the former Chief Minister of occupied Kashmir, Farooq Abdullah. The occupation forces baton charged the women during a protest against India's revocation of Kashmir's special status in Srinagar. Suraya Abdullah and Safiya Abdullah were leading a peaceful protest against New Delhi's lockdown. Over a dozen other women protesters were also manhandled and arrested by the Indian troops. Former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti said India wants to crush civil disobedience and push Kashmiris towards violence. She said Indian government will later use this excuse to justify its brutal oppression in occupied territory. Moving on to Afghanistan, where 23 Taliban fighters have been killed in air and ground operations in southern Zabul and northern Takhar provinces. The Afghan military says 6 others were wounded as well. In a statement, the military said 13 insurgents were killed in a ground operation in Zabul and 10 others in Takhar air raids. The statement said operation would continue until the area is cleared of the insurgents. It added that a Taliban local commander was also among those killed in Takhar. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has met Abu Dhabi's Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed after a visit to Saudi Arabia. The two leaders discussed ways to strengthen economic ties and the security situation in the Middle East. He received a military reception at the Abu Dhabi's presidential palace on arrival to the UAE. Moscow seeks to seal agreements worth $1.3 billion with the UAE during the visit. The UAE said Moscow and Abu Dhabi will work together for stability in Syria. He said both countries will combat extremism and strengthen trade ties. Ireland's Foreign Minister Simon Coveney says Britain must present its proposals for a Brexit deal as early as possible. He said the bloc's leaders can approve an agreement at their summit this week if new proposals are received. Speaking after a meeting of the EU ministers, Coveney said the negotiating teams have made progress, but it's been slow. He said the European Union's Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, will brief the governments on Wednesday.
The negotiating teams have made progress, but it's been slow, and they will need to make significant progress today if there is to be a deal that Michel Barnier can report on tomorrow.
The UK's leader of the parliament, Jacob Rees-Mogg, says there is now enough support among British lawmakers to pass a Brexit deal. In a radio interview, Rees-Mogg said British politicians have had enough and want to get on with the divorce deal. The House of Commons has previously voted down the Brexit deal 4 times. Meanwhile, in Luxembourg, EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier will brief the bloc's ministers on leeway made in the Brexit talks. Discussions between the EU and the UK officials aimed at reaching a deal have intensified as the 31st of October deadline approaches. The bloc's leaders are pushing for an agreement before a major summit on Thursday. Failure to reach an understanding before the summit could force Prime Minister Boris Johnson to seek another delay. Extinction Rebellion activists vow to continue their 2-week campaign of demonstrations in London despite a police ban. British police have banned climate change protests in London after a week of civil disobedience. Police said any assembly linked to the Extinction Rebellion autumn uprising must now end. The group is protesting what it calls government inaction over climate change. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with us. Welcome back. Catalan leader Quim Torra says his government will continue to defend Catalonia's right to self-determination. Spain's Supreme Court jailed 9 separatist leaders for their role in an independence bid in 2017. The Supreme Court's ruling has triggered protests throughout the region. Speaking at a news conference, Torra said Monday's verdict has limited rights that were previously guaranteed. He said his government is committed to protecting the people's rights to demonstrate while maintaining security.
For us, the best way is to continue defending the right of Catalonia to self-determination. This is what now is the key thing, and to defend.
Well, the Duke and the Duchess of Cambridge have attended a reception hosted by the British High Commissioner at the Pakistan Monument in Islamabad. Prince William and Kate Middleton arrived at the venue in a rickshaw decked out in traditional truck art. William was seen wearing traditional Pakistani attire for the first time since his arrival. This is the first visit by British royal family to Pakistan in 13 years. Earlier, the Duke and the Duchess of Cambridge called on Pakistan's President Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan. Prime Minister Imran Khan recalled Pakistan's affection for Princess Diana. The royal couple expressed appreciation for the initiatives taken by Pakistan to combat climate change. Prince William and Princess Kate Middleton are on a 5-day visit to Pakistan. In Jordan, living conditions for Syrian refugees are getting worse. As the war enters its 8th year, refugees fear for their livelihoods due to dwindling international aid and barriers imposed by the Jordan government. This report will tell you more.
When Syria fell into the war in 2011, Firas Othman brought his family of 7 to Jordan. After a year and a half, Othman was registered at the UN Office for Refugees. He started receiving international aid of 180 dinars a month. However, as time passed, the aid began dwindling.
I got a message from UNHCR telling me that next month would be the last time I will get the aid. I replied that I had a medical report of cervical spondylosis. They gave me aid again. But I know a lot of people who have been cut cut off from the aid.
Many Syrian refugees in Jordan don't know how their families would survive without assistance. Many hope to migrate from Jordan to other countries.
It's a big question. We have a lot of debt, and money is always scarce. Every day I call people in immigration office and I want to leave and find a better life.
The refugees said they miss their country but are afraid of returning home because of the ongoing deadly war that has killed countless.
India and Afghanistan are the most hunger-stricken countries in the world. The 2019 World Hunger Index lists India among the two most malnutrition countries in South Asia. The index shows India at 102 out of 117 nations, while Afghanistan is at 108 out of 117 countries. Meanwhile, China tops the list in the South Asian region and stands at the 25th position internationally. 17 countries, including Turkey, Cuba, Croatia, Uruguay, Ukraine, and Kuwait, are at the top of the list in the global index. The UN says a third of the world's nearly 700 million children under 5 years of age are malnourished or overweight. In its first State of the World's Children report since 1999, UNICEF said children face lifelong health problems as a consequence. UNICEF's executive director, Henrietta Fore, said if children eat poorly, they live poorly as well. The report said malnutrition's cost to the global economy is estimated at $3.5 trillion every year. It said 149 million children aged 4 or younger today face stunted development. Meanwhile, 2 billion people are eating too much of the wrong foods, driving epidemics of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. In child obesity, the US tops the list with 41.86%. Typhoon Hagibis, which battered Japan over the weekend and killed around 70 people, has also hit Fukushima, the site of the 2011 Daiichi nuclear disaster. Now, facilities and infrastructure that were rebuilt over the past 8 years have taken another major blow. Many residents are saying Hagibis could be the straw that breaks the city's back. The details in this report.
8 years ago, Fukushima was hit by a tsunami, which triggered one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. The past weekend, the city was hit by Typhoon Hagibis, which killed 25 people and caused significant damage to infrastructure. The latest calamity came just as local municipal officials were preparing to announce Fukushima had recovered from the 2011 crisis.
It is said that disaster strikes when you least expect it, and this is indeed true. I cannot believe it. I'm shocked. I don't know if we can recover from this.
Luckily, officials say there have been no leakage of contaminated water from the Daiichi nuclear plant, but experts say the area may have to go through another intensive cleanup to stay on the safe side.
Yes, it did remind me of the devastating earthquake and tsunami of 2011, but it is important to help each other. I want to recover everything together, not just for myself.
For now, Fukushima citizens are working together to fix the damage, but many are also saying they couldn't take it if the city is hit by another calamity.
Margaret Atwood and Bernardine Evaristo have become the first authors to jointly win the Booker Prize for Fiction since 1992. Atwood's The Testaments and Evaristo's novel Girl, Woman, Other earned each author an equal share of £50,000 prize.
The judges of this year's Booker Prize have explicitly flouted the rules of the literary award. They chose the first joint winners in almost 30 years.
The two victors, if you like, congratulating.
The two winners of the 2019 Booker Prize for Fiction are Margaret Atwood for The Testaments and Bernardine Evaristo for Girl, Woman, Other.
At 79, Atwood is the oldest ever Booker winner.
We've both got curly hair. It's because of that. Yeah. So I'm very surprised. I would have thought that I would have been too elderly.
Meanwhile, Evaristo's win makes her the first black woman to win the Booker since it began in 1969 and the first black British author.
This is incredible. It is so incredible to share this with Margaret Atwood, who is such a legend and so generous. Thank you so much. This is incredible. I suppose a lot of people say this. I never thought it would happen to me. And I will say that I am the first black woman to win this prize.
The other nominees were Lucy Ellman, Chigozie Obioma, and Elif Shafak.
Celebrations for their achievement in the world of literature, and we now move to the celebration towards the existence in West Africa. The small Nigerian town of Igboho, Ora, is holding a twins festival for the second time in its history. Twins from Igboho, Ora, and elsewhere have gathered to celebrate their existence. Details in this report.
Seeing 100 sets of identical twins from all ages, dressed alike, dancing and celebrating together is a treat to one's eyes. Twins in Nigeria have their own festival in town called country's twins capital. More twins are born here than anywhere else on earth, but nobody is quite sure why. Here you can find only a few households which do not have at least one set of twins.
We are not more than one, we are not more than two, we are not more than three, we are countless. So it's great seeing a lot of twins, especially wearing the same thing. You see people wearing the same thing, so it's a great thing to be here then.
Whilst twins could be considered the result of providence, other local people attribute the predominance of twins to tradition. According to one popular belief, this is due to the diet of the women here. They take a particular plant dish, ilasa, made from yam and gombola leaf soup.
This kind of festival is very, very unique because this town has the highest number of twin births.
In the predominantly rural community of Igboho, twins are a blessing, with many pregnant women wishing for multiple births.
Business updates right after a short break. Stay tuned with us. Welcome back. Lows and the highs of the business world now. International Monetary Fund has downgraded its forecast for the most of the world. The fund warns the global economy is growing at its slowest pace since the 2008 and 9 financial crisis. The IMF said world economic growth would hit just 3% this year, sharply down from just 2 years ago. The IMF blamed the slowdown on the US-China trade war, Brexit uncertainty, and other geopolitical crises. It added that there is an urgent need for leaders to de-escalate the tensions.
Heightened trade and geopolitical tensions, including Brexit-related risks, could further disrupt economic activity and derail an already fragile recovery in emerging markets and the euro area. This could lead to an abrupt shift in risk sentiment, financial disruptions, and a reversal in capital flows to emerging markets.
The US says it will impose new tariffs on over $150 billion worth of Chinese goods if a trade deal is not finalized by 15th of December. In an interview, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said major issues including industrial subsidies and cyber theft are still unresolved. Mnuchin said he still hopes a tentative deal agreed on last week to suspend fresh tariffs will be formally approved. The Treasury Secretary said more trade negotiations at various levels will take place over the coming weeks. But Mnuchin's tariff warning seemed in contrast with the US President Donald Trump's optimism last week. Describing the talks as a love fest, Trump said the preliminary deal would take about 5 weeks to complete. He added he might sign the deal alongside China's President Xi Jinping at the United Nations Summit in Chile in December. US stocks have opened higher as the corporate earnings season got off to a strong start. JP Morgan Chase gained in pre-market trading after beating Wall Street estimates for third quarter profit by a wide margin. Shares of United Health Group and Johnson & Johnson also rose. The healthcare companies reported strong quarterly results. The companies also raised their annual profit forecasts. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus.